After countless schemes, countless manipulations, and countless times of silent endurance to secure the highest position within the British royal family, Camilla has now lost everything because of two seemingly harmless pieces of jewelry. But behind those sparkling gems lies more than just material value. They carry memories, a legacy, the living spirit of a woman who has passed Princess Diana. No one could have imagined that within a palace governed by rituals and royal protocols, a scandal bordering on criminal would erupt. Camilla was accused of stealing two pieces of jewelry that once belonged to Diana. And even more shocking, the person who discovered the theft was none other than Princess Catherine, the daughter-in-law long regarded as the last hope of the Windsor dynasty. In an instant, Catherine's outward silence was replaced by decisive action. No longer the gentle daughter-in-law who gracefully avoided intergenerational conflict. No longer the quiet figure retreating to the background to preserve the royal image. This time, Catherine stepped into the light not to protect her own reputation, but to defend the honor of Diana and the future of her own daughter, Princess Charlotte. To Catherine, this was not simply theft. It was betrayal not only of someone no longer here, but of a tear-filled past, a trampled legacy, and a fragile future waiting to be lifted. Diana had once been silently wounded by Camilla, and now, Camilla once again attempted to violate the only remaining fragments of Diana as if trying to erase her from royal history forever. But perhaps Camilla had forgotten one thing: the new generation is no longer silent. Catherine, inheritor of the title Princess of Wales, is the embodiment of continuity and revival. She carries not only Diana's spirit, but also a strength, conviction, and political standing that Diana never possessed in her lifetime. This shocking incident not only placed Camilla in jeopardy, but once again prompted the British public to ask who truly deserves to stand beside the throne: a woman long seen as the symbol of a destroyed marriage, or a mother shouldering the future of an entire monarchy. How did Catherine uncover the theft? What consequences will Camilla face when the truth is brought to light? And can the crown she wears forever hide stains that cannot be cleansed? Don't forget to leave a comment. Share your thoughts on this scandal. Whose side are you on, Camilla or Catherine Hitlike? Share this video and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next revelations in this unfolding battle to reclaim Princess Diana's honor and protect the future of Princess Charlotte. Because right after this, the truth will be revealed piece by piece, layer by layer, through wounds that will never heal. June 18, 2025, a day that seemed ordinary, yet marked an irreversible turning point. The story begins when Princess Catherine personally inspected the Royal Heritage Vault in preparation for a special jewelry exhibition set to honor Princess Charlotte. The exhibition was designed not only to celebrate the new generation, but also to subtly reinvoke the legacy of a woman England has never forgotten: Princess Diana. It was during this inventory check that Catherine noticed something strange. Diana's iconic three-strand pearl necklace, worn during her 1985 tour of Australia, was missing from its designated storage case. Even more concerning, the pair of Qatar pearl earrings, a luxurious gift from the Qatari royal family in 1986, was also absent from the records. Both items were classified as indivisible heritage assets under the royal family's internal statutes, meaning they were strictly forbidden to be moved or used without formal authorization from the Prince of Wales or the reigning monarch. There was no record of the jewelry being withdrawn. No transfer order, not a single entry in the vault's access log. Invisible. Missing as if they had never existed. Catherine said nothing at the time, but her gaze, according to a close aide, was as cold as cut glass. Not because of the jewelry's worth in hundreds of thousands of pounds, but because she knew very clearly only a select few were permitted access to the royal archives. And among them, no one but Camilla possessed the privilege, the motive, and the recklessness. Yet Catherine is not one to act hastily without proof. In silence, she ordered a thorough review of all auxiliary storage locations from the old estate in Norfolk to the secured zone at Windsor, and even the basement of Kensington Palace, where special documents and items from the Victorian era are kept. Everything was done discreetly, without informing anyone except three of the princess's closest confidants. Every frame from the security cameras was reviewed. Digital access logs were traced in real time. But the frightening part was there were no signs of breach, no system errors. The footage had not been tampered with. No unknown persons appeared. The more she checked it, the more Catherine felt chilled. Because this could only lead to one conclusion: the person who took the two pieces of jewelry had enough authority to bypass the entire royal security system. This was no longer a suspicion. It was clear evidence of a premeditated theft. And worse, it was a blatant betrayal not only of Diana, but of Charlotte herself, the child seen as a symbol of the Windsor dynasty's rebirth. When William was briefed by Catherine, he immediately convened an emergency meeting within the Clarence House office and activated the Royal Audit Protocol of 2022, a procedure normally triggered only in emergencies equivalent to the loss of the crown or classified defense documents. The entire Heritage Vault was locked down. Every piece of jewelry related to Diana was sealed. High-level access permissions were frozen, and William could not hide his fury. From now on, trust is no longer an honor. Trust is a security risk. The internal circle was shaken. No one dared to say the name now being silently implied, but a royal source leaked to the press. Catherine no longer has doubts. She's just waiting for the right moment to confront it. The question now was, what will happen if the truth comes to light? Camilla, who once used every tactic to rise to her current position, would she have the strength to stand firm when the heir to the throne and his wife declare war in defense of a deceased woman's honor? And deeper still was the act of seizing Diana's legacy, the final insult, the final destruction by a woman who had once stood behind the tear-soaked years of Diana. But this was only the beginning. When Catherine walked out of that archive room, she carried not just outrage, but determination. A vow that if justice does not come from the throne, then I will bring it back with my own hands, no matter who must pay the price. And then, after days of simmering silence with suspicion still hovering like unfallen storm clouds, the incident finally exploded, right in what should have been the most secure and luxurious place in the monarchy, Buckingham Palace. At noon on June 20th, 2025, during a luncheon hosted to welcome several new ambassadors and guests from Commonwealth nations, Catherine appeared in an elegant ivory dress, composed in demeanor, but with eyes glowing with icy vigilance. No one expected that just moments later, she, the one often deemed too reserved to stir any social gathering, would bring the entire room to a standstill in deathly silence. Amid the clinking of glasses and the faint laughter of lords and ladies, Catherine suddenly froze. Her eyes locked onto the ears of Laura Lopes, Camilla's biological daughter, who was casually chatting near the dessert table. The pearl earrings sparkled under the chandelier light, reflecting in a way Catherine could never mistake. These were not replicas, much less any common item. They were the original earrings from Diana's 1986 Qatar collection, once recorded as a gift from King Khalifa, and most crucially, they had vanished from the archive just days earlier without a single official record. Catherine walked straight toward Laura. No greeting, no smile. With a voice as cold and sharp as a razor, she asked, "Those earrings, where did you get them?" Laura, caught off guard by the question, was speechless for a few seconds. The entire table fell silent. A few distinguished guests looked up. Camilla, standing not far away, turned around, the smile on her face vanishing like a light abruptly switched off. Laura tried to maintain composure, but her eyes were already faltering. They were a gift. From my mother, she replied, her voice noticeably softer. And where did she get them? Catherine pressed on. No raised voice, just one question. But it struck directly at the heart of the lie. Camilla stepped in, trying to intervene, her tone feigning gentleness. Kate, this might be a misunderstanding. But Catherine didn't let her finish. No, this is about honor, about justice, and about the legacy of someone you once hurt without mercy. I demand an immediate inspection. In less than 20 minutes, the earrings were taken to a gem appraiser working nearby within the royal precinct. The verification results left the entire banquet room breathless they were. In fact, Diana's original earrings previously numbered and cataloged in the Royal Heritage System. Not a replica, not a special edition. The originals, and they had been removed without authorization. The atmosphere froze. Camilla said nothing, her face pale. Laura turned crimson and lowered her head, offering no further explanation. A few guests quietly looked away. Gazes began to shift, no longer viewing Catherine as the one causing a scene, but as the one who had dared to do the right thing. That same afternoon, William called an emergency meeting in a private room at Kensington Palace. As the ultimate guardian of the royal heirlooms and as Diana's eldest son, he could no longer remain on the sidelines. Though his political instincts urged silence, he knew full well silence now was not a defense of dignity, but an accomplice to abuse of power. William had announced a full lockdown of the Royal Jewelry Heritage System, invoking the Royal Audit Protocol of 2022 for the second time in a week. The vaults in Norfolk, the Windsor Jewelry Collection, and the storage chambers in Kensington's basement were sealed. Only 3 individuals were granted access: William, Catherine, and a representative from the Royal Inspection Authority. He didn't raise his voice, didn't shout, but every word was recorded in black ink in the Royal Agenda logbook. When trust erodes from within, it ceases to be a family matter. It becomes a matter of security. In the quiet corridors of the palace, whispers began to spread. Servants, security staff, housekeepers, once silent, now looked at one another with different eyes. The name Camilla was no longer spoken with respect. It came with a question mark, with suspicion, even resentment. They didn't just see a stolen item. They saw a silent but ruthless declaration of war against the past, a past where Princess Diana once suffered and was betrayed. And the one now facing the fallout was none other than the woman who had always insisted she only loved Charles, never wanted to be queen. The question now was no longer who did it, but how many more items is Camilla hiding? And Catherine, in her role as a mother, protecting the legacy for her daughter, Princess Charlotte, how far is she willing to go to unearth all the secrets locked inside the royal vaults? But if the luncheon on June 20th felt like a slap to the face of the royal family, what followed was nothing short of a bomb detonating in the heart of Buckingham Palace. From the moment Catherine publicly confronted Laura Lopes and humiliated Camilla in front of dozens of guests, the long-buried secrets behind palace walls began to surface. No longer hidden, no longer wrapped in explanation, and no longer deniable. Immediately after the luncheon, Catherine ordered a full audit of the jewelry inventory from the year 2000 to the present. All duplicate records from Kensington, Sandringham, and the Norfolk Vault were transferred to Windsor within less than 48 hours under strict security. But what left the entire royal family in stunned silence was the detailed report from the internal investigation team in the security log dated April 9th, 2025. Camilla's name was recorded as the sole person to access the jewelry vault for 15 minutes with no registered purpose in the system. That single detail shattered every line of justification Camilla and her daughter had tried to offer. Laura told William that the earrings were a birthday gift from her mother in 2024, claiming Camilla had purchased them at a jewelry auction sometime around 2012. But when asked to provide a receipt, auction certificate, or at least a handwritten note, email, or message verifying the provenance of the item, neither of them could produce anything beyond a repeated statement. It was just a family gift. No one kept the paperwork. Catherine said nothing. She simply handed over reports from Sotheby's and Christie's, the 2 largest auction houses in the world, with a cold conclusion: no item matching the age, material, or design of Diana's Qatari earrings had ever been sold between 2010 and 2020. William, however, could not remain composed. He outright called Camilla's actions theft, and he left no room for compromise. In a closed-door meeting at Clarence House, attended by only 3 people, William, Catherine, and Camilla, the Prince of Wales, spoke bluntly. without restraint. My mother's legacy is not for anyone to take. No one has the right to erase her from history, not under the name of family or for any other reason. Camilla, still trying to maintain her composure, responded that she had no intention of stealing anything. She claimed she had the right to access the jewelry vault as queen consort, and that unused items could be reallocated to avoid waste. But Catherine immediately cut her off, showing for the first time the anger behind her composed exterior. No one has the right to call that waste. That is memory, that is symbolism, and that is Charlotte's future. The room fell silent. To Catherine, the earrings and the pearl necklace were not merely material objects. They were part of Princess Diana's legacy items she had worn with pride, with tears, with hope, and with pain. And now they were intended to be displayed in an exhibition titled Charlotte, the Heir of Legacy, affirming the little princess's role not just as the daughter of William and Catherine, but as the spiritual successor to her legendary grandmother. Thus, Camilla casually gifting them to her own daughter was no different than erasing the symbolic value that William's family was trying to preserve. Even worse, Camilla's secret entry into the vault without logging any usage or obtaining permission had broken every ethical standard established by the royal family since Diana's death. This was no longer a private family matter. It was a breach that could ignite a crisis of trust within the monarchy. For that reason, William rejected all suggestions from his father to handle the matter internally. He demanded a formal investigation and a full public disclosure of all royal family members' access to the jewelry archives over the past 5 years. At the same time, Catherine submitted a written request for the royal family to officially reaffirm its commitment to preserving Diana's entire legacy, both material and symbolic, as an inseparable part of national history. What initially seemed like a small incident, a piece of jewelry mistakenly gifted, had now unearthed something far deeper, a direct confrontation between the new generation and the remnants of a painful past. Camilla, once the symbol of an illicit romance and of Diana's sorrow, now stood publicly and officially accused of deliberately appropriating the legacy of the very woman she had been compared to for over 40 years. And within the rising tide of unspoken criticism inside the royal household, the loudest question was no longer who took the jewelry, but rather how many more secrets are still buried behind the locked doors of this palace. On June 24, 2025, as the early summer sunlight bathed the ancient dome of Buckingham Palace, a thunderous decision was issued in silence, yet it carried the weight of a lightning strike on a clear day. Prince William, heir to the throne and son of Princess Diana, officially signed a special directive revoking Queen Camilla's access to the royal heritage vaults entirely. Simultaneously, he imposed an absolute ban on Camilla's stepdaughter, Laura Lopes, forbidding her from accessing any royal archives, jewelry, or assets tied to the Windsor legacy. This directive was not merely an internal document, it was a declaration of war. A public act signaling to the entire royal family and the public that anyone who disrespects Princess Diana's memory must face consequences. No exceptions, not even for the current wife of King Charles. Camilla, once a proud presence at ceremonial events, was now erased from all engagements related to the Prince and Princess of Wales. No more representation. No more seating beside William and Catherine. Most notably, she was excluded from the Summer Heritage Strategy session at Sandringham, the very meeting that determines which heirlooms will be preserved, displayed, or passed down to future generations. Her absence was dubbed by insiders as an internal exile, a form of banishment never publicly declared, but understood by all to be a definitive end. When the directive reached Camilla's hands, many palace staff witnessed her icy expression, no longer the commanding queen, but a woman utterly isolated in the very world she once longed to rule. Laura Lopes, once shielded by her mother's power, was also removed from all jewelry vault access lists. A woman who had stood at her mother's side through every lavish banquet was now nothing more than a confused shadow, quietly swept off stage, a symbolic fallout. If William's directive was a legal blow, then the public and media response was a symbolic blade severing whatever remained of Camilla's influence. The Times did not hesitate to call it the first internal exile in modern royal history. The Guardian described it as a ruthless yet necessary recalibration of the royal narrative. Within the palace, even those once close to Camilla began to distance themselves. A senior staff member put it bluntly, "She's been erased." Camilla's name was removed from advisory lists. Her image vanished from internal bulletins. Her words were no longer cited in staff reports. In quiet consensus, all agreed Camilla was now a queen in title only, stripped of any real authority. This silent stripping of power made the public reaction all the more intense. Rather than a long, drawn-out investigation, the royal family chose to end Camilla's influence quietly but methodically, layer by layer, step by step, as if to etch into the public memory that she was no longer a central figure. Meanwhile, William and Catherine continued to cement their roles as true guardians of Princess Diana's legacy. Their actions, though not loud, carried a sharp message: the new royal era has no room for those who seek to bury the past in order to build power for themselves. Camilla had survived many public backlashes in the past, but this time, she had no ground to retreat to, no William to negotiate with, no public to placate, and no throne to hold real control. On July 1st, 2025, on what would have been Princess Diana's 64th birthday, Catherine made a gesture of profound symbolism. She personally oversaw the sealing of the jewelry vault at Kensington Palace. A new biometric security system was installed under strict supervision, ensuring that only two people would have access: Catherine herself and the custodian appointed to Charlotte. While every other royal family member was absent, Catherine quietly proceeded with locking away Diana's treasures. She left behind a short handwritten note on a velvet box placed at the center of the vault for Charlotte. "With love, Mum." That message was more than a mother's note. It was a vow to protect the memory of the woman who once endured so much pain within the cold walls of that palace. Without issuing any public statements to the press, Catherine continued to appear at Charlotte's events with solemn grace, yet with an unshakable resolve in her eyes. The media captured images of Catherine holding her daughter's hand at the opening of a Diana photo exhibition in London, an event planned months earlier, now layered with deeper meaning after the jewelry scandal. As Charlotte's mother and Diana's daughter-in-law, Catherine made one thing unmistakably clear: no one, not even the woman wearing the Queen's crown, has the right to violate Diana's legacy. This was not merely a generational clash, but a firm declaration that the new royal era will no longer tolerate manipulation or power plays disguised as tradition. Without raising her voice, Catherine had defended Diana in the most noble and effective way, through decisive action, by reclaiming control, and with the heart of a woman who deeply understands the worth of endured pain. Without a coup or an official announcement from Buckingham Palace, the aftermath of the jewelry scandal clearly drew the line between past and future. A quiet yet forceful shift began within the royal family staff at Clarence House. Long loyal to Camilla started to be reassigned or voluntarily transferred to work at Kensington Palace. From media advisors and ceremonial experts to the security team, many chose to place their bet on a new symbol: Catherine. The woman once doubted for being too common to hold a place in the line of succession was now emerging as an irreplaceable pillar of the royal family. Catherine's approval rating in public polls soared to 82%, the highest among all current royal members, far surpassing both Charles and Camilla. The media hailed her as the moral center of the modern monarchy, a woman who listens yet is strong enough to stand for what's right. The name Diana, long overshadowed, now echoed once more in headlines, not with tears and scandal, but with continuity. Catherine made no attempt to become a replica of Diana. She chose to carry forward that spirit in her own way, gentle but unyielding, quiet yet influential. Observers noted that the royal family was entering a period of transition, as the center of power gradually shifted toward the Wales household. And in that transfer, Catherine was the one redrawing the boundary between title and truth, between tradition and genuine faith. There was no longer any doubt the era of Diana this time would not be stolen again. On July 4th, 2025, just days after Catherine tightened her grip on the Heritage Vault, William delivered a decisive political blow. He was no longer merely heir to the throne. From that moment forward, William became the final guardian of Diana's memory, a role from which even King Charles was excluded. The latest royal directive, issued by William, sent shockwaves through the Windsor family. It declared that all personal heritage, belongings, and correspondence linked to Princess Diana were now officially protected under strict internal policy. No royal member outside the Wales family, including William, Catherine, and Charlotte, would be permitted to access or use these items for personal or ceremonial purposes. The ban was not only an act of safeguarding a late mother's memory, but a message of defiance against anyone who had ever sought to distort, seize, or exploit Diana's image, regardless of who they were, including Queen Camilla. Notably, William confronted King Charles directly in a private meeting at Windsor. In a tension-filled atmosphere, William was reported to have said bluntly, "If you won't act to protect her, I will, alone." The brief exchange ended in silence from King Charles, who appeared to lack both the authority and the resolve to respond. That moment marked the irreparable collapse of the father-son relationship. It didn't take long for the public to feel the gravity of that action. Within just 72 hours of the new policy being announced, over 20,000 letters poured into Kensington Palace from across Commonwealth nations. Words of support, emotion, and urgent pleas flooded in like a breaking tide. From Canada, Australia, New Zealand to South Africa, millions shared one voice. To protect Diana is to protect the history and dignity of the British monarchy. Hashtags such as hashtag Protect Charlotte, #Diana Forever, #Queen Catherine, and hashtag Not My Queen Camilla quickly surged to the top of global trends. Social media exploded with old clips of Diana, interspersed with images of Catherine and Charlotte at recent events, hailed as a living continuation of maternal grace and timeless elegance, standing in stark contrast to Camilla, who was being stripped of her power piece by piece. Public opinion became not just divided but increasingly fierce. On one side stood Charles and Camilla, now seen as symbols of obsolescence, moral failure, and deceit. On the other were William, Catherine, and Charlotte, the image of the ideal royal family that Britain longed for following Diana's death in 1997. And for the first time in years, public support no longer leaned toward the throne, but toward legacy. The division was no longer a matter of speculation. It was a reality marked by legal actions, public outrage, and bold shifts within the palace itself. A veteran employee at Clarence House revealed that many inside were now requesting transfers to Kensington Palace in order to work for the future, not a past stained by scandal. And while Charles has remained silent and Camilla has all but disappeared from official functions, William continues to move forward as a true leader. He is not only protecting his mother's legacy, but also building a new version of the British monarchy, one founded on respect, transparency, and sincere love, instead of the schemes, secrecy, and betrayal that once shattered a symbol like Diana. When the public asks, who is writing the next chapter of the royal story, the answer is already clear. No longer King Charles. Certainly not Queen Camilla. It is William, with Catherine and Charlotte by his side, who is shaping a new chapter, one of justice, memory, and a love that time cannot bury.